Hi everybody and welcome. My name is Steve Sarsfield. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Talend. Today we're going to talk about an exciting topic, supply chain and ERP data. We're going to talk about how we can improve data quality within your materials master data. So the business goal that we're after here when we talk about improving supply chain data is really twofold. First, we want to make sure that we are carrying the correct inventory levels. And we want to make sure that our carrying costs are low. So we want to make sure that our data accurately reflects what's in inventory. So that's the first reason. The second reason is really a complete understanding of buying patterns for contract negotiations. We want to make sure that we don't have a lot of duplicate parts in there. We can take that to our vendors and we can use that for negotiating better prices, and we can use that for understanding our buying patterns. So when you actually look at what's in the database, you might find things like this. So here we have what seems to be the same product, and it's designated in three different ways within the ERP supply chain system. So these are the types of data that exist within material masters commonly, and how do we take these items and pull them together and designate them as one item as they should be. So to show a sample of this, I've set up a database that contains SKU numbers that are somewhat the same but have minor variations, and descriptions that also are somewhat the same but have minor variations. Those are the types of things that we want to look at when we look at our supply chain and ERP data. One thing I notice here is that the SKU numbers are not standardized. Some contain dashes and some contain spaces, and so one thing I want to do is make sure that they all conform with the standard for a SKU number, which is no dashes and no spaces. I also want to look here at the descriptions, and I want to understand what are the most common descriptions for any given SKU number, and how can I standardize those and bring those descriptions together so that they match for all the various SKUs. Now as I jump over to the Talend Open Profiler, again Talend Open Profiler is a piece of software that you can go and download from talend.com. So here we see the standard screen for Talend Open Profiler, where the data quality repository is in the upper left hand corner. There are three tabs in the data quality repository: data profiling, libraries, and metadata. If I look at the first tab under the data quality repository, under data profiling, I'll see an analysis folder, and this is where we store all of our analysis. So if we create an analysis and then at some point we want to come back and rerun it, it would be stored here under this analysis folder. Next, I'm going to look at the libraries tab, and under the libraries tab we have all sorts of included and custom indicators that allow you to look at things like is it a correct email address, is it a correct internet IP address, and I've also created some custom patterns under here. Using regular expressions, I am able to create a custom pattern for my SKU numbers. Now in this case it's a very simple pattern. What the pattern does is it looks for spaces and dashes, and if the SKU number contains a space or a dash, it's non-compliant. So we're looking at SKUs that should only contain numbers and letters and no spaces or dashes. The third tab in the data quality repository is the metadata. So this is where we're connected to all of our databases. I have a database called test, which contains the SKU numbers and descriptions that I showed earlier. The first thing I'll do is I'll take a look at our SKU numbers, and I'll try to understand the number of spaces that we have within our SKU numbers, whether there's any leading spaces or extra spaces or dashes in there, and we can do that using our regular expression. And I'll also understand the patterns that exist using some of the basic profiling functions that are included with Talend Open Profiler. So to do that, I just right-click and select Analyze. Talend Open Profiler asks me to name the analysis so we can run it later. And now my analysis is set up. So next I'll go and select indicators for the SKU column and also set up our regular expression pattern to check to make sure that we have no spaces or dashes within our SKUs. Okay, so those are the standard patterns, and now I'll set up our regular expression. Now to run this process and analyze the SKU numbers, I'll click on the running man, and that will set the analysis in motion. When the analysis comes up, we are shown some column analysis for the SKU number, and here first we can see frequency statistics on values. So what are the most common values that exist within SKU, and what are the least common values? We can see minimum, maximum, and average length. And we can see how our SKU number does against our regular expression for patterns. We can see here that we have a good chunk of data that doesn't match the pattern, and the next thing we'll need to do is probably drill down and take a look at those rows and values. I'll right-click and select View Invalid Rows. So now Talend presents a list of SKU numbers that don't meet our standard for dashes or spaces. And this is something that we can use our Talend data quality product, kind of our pay product that we have, to fix or mitigate, or we can do some kind of manual process to fix these SKU numbers so that they don't contain spaces and don't contain dashes. Now an interesting feature here is that at the top we have a SQL statement that allows us to pull these records and values out again. So if at some point I want to send information about this list to someone, maybe they want to work on it, maybe you want to assign it to someone, they can use this select statement, manually pull these out from the database. Now let's do something really cool here. Let's take a look at how SKU numbers relate to descriptions in the database. Is there any correlation between SKU and description? Let's take a look at that using our correlation analysis. First, I select the two columns by shift-clicking. Then all I need to do is analyze correlation. Again, Talend Open Profiler asks us to name the analysis so that we can run it later. And you click on the running man to actually run the analysis. When I maximize the screen, I see a really cool correlation analysis chart. So here in the middle I could see XC-3211 and then all of the descriptions that relate to XC-3211. So this can be really helpful in understanding how XC-3211 is represented as a description in your database. You can see here that the lines relate to the number of instances that exist within the database. So we have one instance of lap seam sealant, and we have 3 instances of the synthetic polymer based, etc., etc., etc. If I turn on the picking function, which lets me move the dots around, I can see that there is a relationship between XC-3211 and XC-3211, and they are tied together by the description, the lap seam sealant. So that's another good piece of information in doing this analysis and coming up with a really good, strong, duplicate-free materials master. You can see a similar variation with permaboard and some of the part numbers that are around the permaboard. So that's also interesting information, trying to pull together that standardized list.